Alright, and we're back. A couple people had a few more questions. So we're doing another video, or I'm doing another episode. We're going to open with some leopard facts. Did you know that leopards are very agile and can run up to 37 miles per hour, leap over 100 feet. Wow, no. Leap over 20 feet and jump up to 10 feet. They can also carry twice their weight in prey up the trunks of trees, and that's pretty crazy. They're the smallest of the four really big cats, which include jaguars, lions, and tigers. The leopards are the smallest. Also, another fun fact, when they want to signal to prey that they're not hunting, and so to, resume your business and leave me alone and don't alert everyone that I'm there, they put up their tail. Leopard tails have they have a white patch on the bottom, and when they put it up, it curls up like this, and the prey can clearly see them, versus when it's down, that means that they're hunting. So, cool facts. Master Kit had a question of, what is your opinion on showing versus telling, and how and when the two can be used effectively? Either way. Showing versus telling is one of those things, to me, that every author has to kind of decide for themselves as they're writing their story. This has been kind of a long-standing thing that a lot of authors and writers say, show, don't tell. If you want to establish a fact, show me how that fact is established, instead of saying, oh, okay, so for instance, in Shadow of Fate, if I want to show you, or have it be known, rather, that Severe is vindictive and essentially evil and twisted and crazy, then instead of saying Severe is vindictive and evil and crazy, I show you by how he toys with his victims. I show you by his interaction, and how I can make things seem off, just a little off, where he comes on and you're like, there's something a little off in how he talks, or his mannerisms, or the things that he does, instead of just coming out and saying, this is how I want you to perceive my character. I show you how I would like to perceive my character to be perceived. But at the same time, I think that telling can have its advantages as well. If you have two best friends, for instance, Gavin and Co. in my Angel story are complete besties, and make it very clear from the beginning that Co is labeled as the best friend. I refer to him as the best friend, but I also back up that statement with a lot of actions, how Co interacts with Gavin, and how he genuinely cares about him and expresses concern whenever he's having problems. He always wants to hang out, that type of stuff. That's typical best friend behavior. But I don't think it would be it's incorrect for me to just come out and say, oh, they're best friends, because they are. So I think with showing versus telling, it's something that you kind of have to decide if it's appropriate for that particular scene, that particular story, and what you want to be communicating. Do you want to have your characters be really obvious about these characteristics? Do you want it to be something that the reader discovers for themselves as they're reading? Like in, trying to think of an example. Now all I can think about is the Raven Boys, of course. And in the Raven Boys, I won't make this spoilerly. In the Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater, she depicts Ronan, who's one of my favorite characters, as someone who's very sharp and cruel, and he's all sharp edges, and he's described as having molten eyes and a smile made for war. That type of stuff is stuff that obviously she wants it to be very strong, but she also exhibits it in how he talks. He is kind of a jerk. Well, he just is a jerk. He is very abrupt even with his friends, but in the things that he does, she uses that ferocity and shows how loyal he is to his friends, and to Gansey and Adam and Noah, and the things that he does. Like there's a scene where he's teaching Adam to drive a clutch, and he's using Ronan's car. That type of stuff, which is, to me, depicts how he is also a good friend, but he's very sharp and he's very prickly and someone who's not good, who's not easy to get to know. So she both shows and tells those characteristics. She does it very well, in my opinion, and I think that it's a good balance to kind of have both. But that's personally what I prefer. A lot of authors will have nothing but showing instead of telling. But I think it's kind of something that you kind of have to find for yourself, and it's going to be a balance that you have to discover for your story. In Shadow of Fate, there's an awful lot of showing versus telling, because I wanted to be the type of story, because it's so rich in detail and so rich in language and settings, and it's an entire world. I had to describe a lot, but I also wanted things to be told, to be left up to the reader to interpret. That's one of the things that I really like about any stories that I read, where they'll give you kind of an unbiased opinion, and it will be kind of like, well, you figure it out for yourself, and or you make the determination. Is Longlar a coward for always wanting to survive and not necessarily being brave, but being smart about how he survives and what he compromises in order to survive? Or is he just a survivor? So I like leaving stuff like that up to interpretation. Other things that I want to make very clear are things that I describe. Like, I describe how Alan is very still a lot. He's a watcher. He's someone who observes and then acts. But you may not see action for him for a while if he's just sitting there observing. Versus Severe, who, in contrast, when they're next to each other, Severe is very bold and outspoken, and he never shuts up, and he's moving all the time. He's kind of like Alan, to me, is, if you have river water, Alan is the part in the shade that's really still along the bank and just kind of sitting there, and Severe is the part that's just rushing, going by. So you're going to be noticing him quicker. You're going to be thinking that he's kind of maybe the brains of the operation, when it's not true. So that's something I wanted to show versus tell, and something that I had to find a balance with, because it's one thing to be like, oh, Alan is quiet, and then it's another thing to have an entire scene with him where he only says a few lines. He's not really a chatterbox. He keeps everything very close to the chest, and to me, that helps make him more of a frightening villain, who just loves to hear himself talk. So I think it's something you kind of have to decide for yourself and think, what am I trying to accomplish with this scene? Do I want to kind of give the reader a little leeway and tell them things that that I don't necessarily have, not the time, but I don't really want to show or build up the showing part? Or do I want to do both? I don't think there's ever... See, with writing, it's so subjective. I don't think there's a right and a wrong way. I think there's a way for you to tell your story, and that it is completely fine for you to do however you would like. I like a mix of both. I don't mind either. I know in the writing world, a lot of people are very strongly opinionated about this one. But I think with important details, that it's better to show them instead of tell them. But that's just me, and that's just my opinion. So, yeah, I hope that helps. I don't know if it does, but there it is. And another fun fact, did you know that most big cats have their incisors are appropriately spaced to fit in between the vertebrae of their main prey, so it's easier to sever? It's kind of a gross and awesome fact, that they're built to take down a certain type of prey. And of course they can eat other prey, but there's always going to be a certain type of prey that their teeth just kind of marry very nicely on the vertebrae. It's one of my favorite facts. So that's all I have to say on this one. If you have any other questions, shoot them at me. This is fun, and I'm sorry you keep having to see my face. Bye! Oh, where's the button?